Welcome into a very special episode of American Joyride. I'm joined today by Nate Boyer, a former United States Army Green Beret and football player. Nate, happy to have you here.
Good to be here, brother. Appreciate it.
Well, Nate, I want to jump right into the meaty stuff right from the top here. You were a Green Beret, which is obviously a very advanced, elite segment of the United States military. You went on multiple deployments. What motivated you to want to be a Green Beret?
You know, after 9/11, I had thought about the military a little bit, but didn't end up enlisting right away. I wasn't 100% sure. I ended up eventually going over to Africa uh, to uh, to Chad actually, and did some relief work near the Darfur along the Sudanese border. And I was there for a couple of months. Really changed my life in a lot of ways, and gained valuable perspective. And um, my last week there, I actually got malaria, and this family put me up and was taking care of me. And they put this little radio next to my bed, and I'm listening to the Second Battle of Fallujah while I'm recovering, and trying to heal up. And um, I just kind of felt like at that moment, I know when I come home, I'm going to join the military. And in that battle, the main effort was the Marines. So I thought I was
Right.
going to come home and be a Marine. I came home, went to the Marine Corps recruiting base or recruiting office or whatever. Didn't really have a good experience. So, was a little bit frustrated, like, man, what am I going to do? And then I found out about the Army Special Forces. They had this new program called the 18 X-ray program, where you
Yep.
could come in off the street and go straight into uh, uh, special forces training, basically assessment and selection. If you get through basic training in airborne school, which most people did, of course, the attrition rate was really high and all that, but it was an opportunity to kind of come in right off the street and tryouts for something like that. And it was just appealing, with the motto "De oppresso libera," which means to free the oppressed. That was really appealing to me. And I don't know. I thought, I figured, why not? If I don't make it, I'll still be, maybe I'll get a chance to go to Ranger School, or at least be an airborne infantry soldier. And, that's awesome too. So yeah,
And
that's when that opportunity opened up, I just went for it.
and you did a total of 3 deployments, right?
I did. I went to Iraq once and Afghanistan twice. I went to some other
Perfect.
places as well, but they weren't combat deployments. They were more like training exercises. But
So one of
yeah,
the questions I always enjoy asking guys that deployed, especially to Iraq and Afghanistan, and I get a ton of different answers, but did you love deployment? Some guys can't get enough of being over there. Were you one of those guys?
yeah. I mean, I would say I can definitely get enough. Um, I love the mission. I love the opportunity. What we were doing, the adventure of it. I loved, yeah, doing the job we were trained to do. But it is a grind. Days start feeling it's like Groundhog's Day every day, and uh, that kind of stuff. You're ready to get home. And I'm kind of the type of person I like to move around and do different things. I'm not a big routine guy. Which, in the military, we all have our routines at some level, but um, I like things to kind of be fluid and always changing. And so those type of things were that part of the deployment was tough. Um, but as far as what we were doing and the people, serving alongside those men and women, uh, I love that. Yeah, I definitely I'm more skewed towards this side of enjoyment.
Were any of your deployments particularly hot, like were the conflicts overly over the top, or was it more on the mild end when things were kind of winding down? What was your experience from that perspective?
I thought you were talking about temperature first.
No, no, no,
It was
conflict
definitely
wise.
hot. It's definitely hot in Iraq. Oh 08, oh 09 was when I was there, and it was very, very hot. But yeah, actually, my last deployment, which wasn't until 2014. Excuse me, no, 14. Yeah, 2014. Um, actually, it was kind of high. It was like sort of the last offensive operations for the most part. We had a commando mission in Afghanistan. So we're working with Afghan commandos, which is sort of like their rangers essentially. And they've been at war for 13 years at that point. And pretty good at what they did, considering the lack of resources and education and things like that. So, but yeah, we definitely, we're plenty busy on that trip. I'll just say that.
I like that. I like that. If you had to take one thing that really surprised you the most about war that you just completely either were unprepared for or no one had told you about, was there anything that really kind of, and not in a bad way, not necessarily in a bad way, but was there just anything that was just wildly unexpected?
Hmm. I mean, that's a good question. There's probably a lot of things. I mean, until you're in the midst of, a gunfight or, you know, feeling like your life's actually in danger, it's kind of hard to, um, I don't want to say prepare for that, but it's hard to like know what that feels like. So that expectation. So I think some of those things, some of the sensory things that I remember beyond what you saw, but just like the smells, you know what I mean,
Right.
are very specific. And those are things that when I smell something like that, it takes me back there. Um, you know, I mean, you really obviously you see the impact too. You're not just watching it on a screen, watching whether it's through the news or a scripted movie or something. Uh, you're not just seeing what's dictated to you through a camera lens. You're seeing this whole world around you and kind of being a part of it, and the impact that it has, mostly negatively, on the people around it. Like the war itself, of course, like the result of what you're trying to do and what we're trying to accomplish is to provide, freedoms and hope and possibility for these people. But while that's all going on, all that other stuff around is tough. Um, Yeah, I mean, but also like a respect for your enemy in a different way. That um, their trade craft, doing what they do, especially in Afghanistan. Um, how they've never really been conquered in a sense. Not that that was our intention of going over there. We weren't trying to conquer Afghanistan. But still, like that respect of like understanding they don't have much, and in many cases, pretty much nothing, but they're not only like resilient, but they're smart, with uh, what they have. They're definitely uh, the type of people that sort of use that home field advantage, the best way possible, and so there's just like that type of respect for the resourcefulness that they have. Um, that those kind of things I didn't think about as much until I was sort of there. You know, yeah. So there's a
So
lot of stuff there.
I got to be honest with you. I was watching your interview with Jack Carr, I've spoken with before, done interviews, great guy. You said
Yeah,
something in that interview that I thought was fascinating. Most of the guests on this show are former Tier 1 CAG guys. And you said in that interview you tried out for CAG. I think you said after just your first 2 years. Is that right? 2 years in the military?
yeah. I'd only been
So
in 2 years. Yeah, and then pretty much all of it was in training. I mean, I was straight into special forces. So,
th-
yeah.
I mean, that's pretty bold. I like the confidence of that. What did you learn about yourself going through an experience of that nature? You obviously you said you got through selection, ultimately don't make CAG, but like how does that help you grow? You didn't get the final goal, but you did do something that is wildly difficult to even get through any part of.
Yeah, I mean, one of the reasons I decided to go try it was, or try out was, I'd just gotten earned my Green Beret 3 months prior, maybe, and I get out to Okinawa, my first duty station, and I was an Echo, commo guy, so I'd started in the SIGDET, so I go to the SIGDET, and then I find out, that the company, I'm going to, we're about to go to the Philippines for a year, and nothing wrong with that. I understand it's a mission, it's important, but like this was in 2007, and it's like we're in the middle of Iraq and Afghanistan, and I just really wanted to go there, as a lot of people did, right? And I was like, this is why I signed up. This is what I wanted. This is the whole point. Um, and I'm about to go to the Philippines for a year and God knows where after that. And the recruiters came out to the battalion, and I just was like, well, I'll just go to the meeting and listen. And I sit there and listen to it. I'm hearing all like you have to be in the Army minimum 2 years. I'm like, well, I barely qualify for that, but I do. And you got to have your like a pending top secret clearance. I have that going. I've got all that. I pretty much checked all the boxes, except I just had zero experience, no deployments. I mean, training experience, but not real world. But I was just like, you know what? I'm in really good shape right now. I talked to the recruiter afterwards and kind of told him my whole deal, and he was just like, well, you can apply. Worst case, they just deny it. So I do, and I don't hear back for a while. I'm kind of following up with them, and then there's a limited number of slots for each selection class, and I got an email back. Maybe I feel like it was not long, 3 weeks before I was leaving, and said, "Hey, there's a slot. You got to let us know today or something, or soon if you want it." And I was like, "Yeah, yes." So I did, and it was funny. I remember the company, or I guess the battalion sergeant major and battalion commander had me in their office, and they heard I was going, because there was a couple other guys from the battalion going as well that were, a lot more experienced than me. And they just were like, they were supportive, but they were also like, you better freaking make it. You know what I mean? Like, I was like, oh God. So I go out there, and the class before mine had like 3 guys get selected or
Yeah.
something. And I go out, and from a physical standpoint, I was in really good shape. And I just kind of pushed myself as hard as I could, knowing that I'm going to be the least experienced person here. I have to kind of outshine every place I can. And I made it through. I got selected, and then, getting to train for roughly 6 months out at OTC with the best that have ever done it. I'm learning from the best that have ever done it. Even though I ultimately didn't, get put on squadron and make the final roster or whatever. They told me if I wanted to, I could come back in 2 years. I ended up going to college and playing football and doing something different. But yeah, that training was incredibly valuable, because the other cool part about it is once I got to that point where it was time to move on and go somewhere else, they helped me go sort of where I wanted to go. They were like, look, you're young, you just need to get downrange. And I'm like, I agree. It's exactly why I came here. Like, that's what I want to do. So they put me on a team in 10th group. I was in 1st Special Forces group prior, and they put me on a team in 10th Special Forces group that was leaving on deployment in like a month. And I go out there, and it was cool because that team was also very experienced, and they'd all just gotten back from a deployment maybe 6 months before that. And they thought it would, from their perspective, it was like, well, here's a guy that's been to this elite academy, in a sense, that'll have some techniques and things that we can work through when it comes to CQB and that type of stuff. So that was cool. I was like, kind of, well, even though I was a rookie on the team, and they still gave me crap, of course. Like, I felt like, yeah, valued. You know what I mean? And even though it was my first deployment, it's like I'm at least bringing something to the table. So
Right.
it all worked out the way it was supposed to.
Yeah, it's fascinating. When I heard you say that, I was like, man, I got to write that down. I got to ask about that because that's fast. 2 years, for those watching the show, they know that is not very long for most guys that attempt to become a member of that specific unit. So props to you. You got major, major cojones. I want to talk the transition from the military to football in your life now at football. For those of you who don't know, Nate played football for the University of Texas. First question, what do you think about Texas joining the SEC?
Oh, I think it's awesome. I'm excited for it. I just think about all the the road trips, the road games. I mean, I got to play at Ole Miss my sophomore year, and it was really cool. But I was like, man, I didn't get to experience the Grove. I just want to be a fan. And I mean, of course, I want to go to Death Valley, and I want to go to the Swamp, and we're going to Tuscaloosa anyway this season coming up. But there's just so many. I mean, Milan Stadium up in Tennessee, like it's endless. Like these are, and also we're going to be playing A&M again every year.
Right.
So that's a huge piece of this, because that absolutely needs to happen. So I'm assuming they're going to set it up so that A&M and Texas play every year. That would
Without
be
a
ridiculous
doubt.
if they don't. So yeah, for all those reasons, absolutely, I'm all in. And the SEC has dominated college football for at least the last decade, if not a little bit longer than that. So, but we belong. I mean, we belong right in that mix. Like every time we play an SEC team, we lost to Bama by 1 last year. We lost to LSU by a touchdown the year they won the national championship, and we should have won that game. We beat Georgia in the Sugar Bowl. You know what I mean? So we belong in that play. We belong in that type of level of competition. I think we'll step our game up and play even better than we have in the Big 12.
Well, it's going to be fascinating to watch unfold. But for you specifically, as a member of the Texas Longhorns, quickly kind of explain how that works. So you're a Green Beret, now you're going to go to college, you end up on the football team. Obviously, none of that happened by accident. So what was the bang, bang, bang of how you ended up a member of the Longhorns?
Yeah, I never played football growing up, and it was like a huge regret of mine. It was my favorite sport. Grew up in the Bay Area, so I was a 49ers fan. As a kid, it was Montana and Rice and Roger Craig and Ronnie Lott. I mean, it was a dynasty, and and I didn't play because when I was real young. I started playing soccer. Then I'm playing little league baseball. Now I'm playing basketball, and I'm a little small, but also I was never like a great athlete. I was a good athlete that just worked really hard, and I remember being about 13 or so and thinking, man, I should play football. Like it's my favorite one. I really want to do it. My dad had wrestled, and he was trying to, suggest I should get into wrestling. And I didn't do that. I just was like, I'm not really into wrestling. I don't want to wear a singlet. Too weird. And I just didn't. I didn't do it because I was afraid. Well, what if I lose my starting spot in baseball or basketball, or I don't make the team because of this or whatever. And I just, shied away from it, and it like stuck with me, that weird regret of not going for it. So I'm in Iraq on that deployment we were just talking about, the one that led me there, and towards the end of it, it's like football season's rolling around, and this is the 2008 season. So the Longhorns are in the mix, with Colt McCoy and Jordan Shipley and all those guys, and I think they ended up. That was that year with the Crabtree catch.
Yeah.
And I believe, I think it was that year with the Crabtree catch, and like all this crazy stuff happened, and Texas was just on the outside. I think Oklahoma went to the national championship that year. I'm pretty sure. So they were like third. They ended up going to the Fiesta Bowl, but I just I really liked the team. I never was a Texas fan prior to that, but I'd been to Austin. It was a cool city, and also like I just noticed on that deployment specifically, my team sergeant was always wearing a Longhorn hat, and you see like the flag hanging in barracks rooms, and it was just like it was a thing. That I was like, man, this is like like the Army's favorite team, maybe outside of, let's say, Army. And so I just said, there's kind of, it was sort of random, but I was like, you know what, I'm going to get out of here. I'm not going to go back to North Carolina to finish up that, the training with CAG and everything. I'm just going to get out and go to college and go try and play football. I've always wanted to do this. It's going to bother me if I don't. At the time I was, 27, 28 years old on that deployment. Like I'm not getting any younger. So that's what I did. I went out there and, applied to Texas and ended up getting in. And, I was actually in Iraq training, like running routes in the sand and trying to learn how to backpedal, and, started doing Olympic lifts and trying to get in football shape, put a little weight on. So yeah, it was definitely a different deployment experience. And I obviously had a very different college experience as well. But
Did you
but
find
yeah,
that your military experience made the transition to being on a major college football team easier because you came from not just a team background, but a team background in like high intense, high stress atmosphere where literally life and death is at play. And now you're going to a big team atmosphere with obviously way lower consequences, but still high stress.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I had confidence that that I had never had in the past. Just a belief in myself that I could do almost anything. I'm like, well, whatever I want to do, I'll just outwork everybody. That's what I did here in the army to be successful. Was just you know even when things don't ultimately work out, like with CAG, just to get where I got was um, it's just a testament to like if you got to make a lot of sacrifices and kind of go all in on some things, but if you do that, you can put yourself in position to do some pretty incredible things. And I just brought that same mentality to football, even though I hadn't played it. I'm like, I know I'm in good shape. I know I'm not afraid to get run over and fail and end up on my face every day. I'm okay with that. The only thing I'm not okay with is like a lack of effort.
Right.
And so I just kind of poured everything into that. I moved out to Austin. I checked into a Motel 6, stayed there for like a month. Um, I was like filling the bathtub up with ice after like during tryouts, like after every day of tryouts, and like making my own little cold tub in the seedy motel. And but I loved it. I was like so excited because this is like I'm living this dream out, and I'm gonna make it. I can feel it. I'm gonna make it. And then finally, coming in the locker room one day, you've got like a pair of shoes and workout stuff with your name on it. And it's just like it's a pretty cool moment. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, no, I've never played D1 football, so I can't imagine what it means, but I can tell, I have no doubt it's wildly exciting. I want to talk a little bit about what you're doing with Jay Glazer now.
Yeah.
It is merging vets with players, MVP for short. Tell the audience, obviously, Jay Glazer works for Fox as well, which owns the company I work for, all under the same banner. Tell the audience a little bit about what you're doing with Jay, kind of how it got started, the goals, and where you're hoping to take it.
Yeah. MVP, Emerging Vets and Players started in 2015, end of 2015. And it was like after college, I had a brief opportunity in Seattle. So I went to the Seahawks. I was there for, off-season training camp and played in one preseason game, which was an incredible experience. And when that ended, I had actually gotten out of the military just a few months before that. My last deployment was in 2014. In the spring of 2015, I was done with my time in the National Guard. So while I was in college, I was in the National Guard. So I was deploying in the summer times, coming back, playing football, kind of going back and forth. And I loved like constantly being busy, always having a team, always having a mission, you know, like a structure in a sense of like, oh, I have to work out for this reason because I have to be prepared for that, and I have to be here on time for this meeting or, we got a mission, trucks are rolling outside the wire at this time. I got like backwards plan from there. And it just kind of like, it makes life tough in some ways as far as relationships and other things. But, you always feel like you're doing something meaningful, like and that's a good feeling when you're sitting around and you feel like things don't really matter and no one's relying on you. It's not a good feeling. And that's sort of how I felt. And it was quick how quickly I felt that when football was over. It was like, all right, I know I can do anything next, like whatever I want to do, I can go pursue it. I live in the United States. Like I have that opportunity, but what do I want to do? And also like I could just sleep until 11 every day. And, which sounds nice for like a week, when you're just kind of like a vacation mode recovery thing. But then after a while, you're like, it's not good. It's
No,
not good
it's
for your
not.
brain. It's not
It's
healthy.
terrible.
And, yeah. And so Jay, could kind of see that in me a little bit that I was like trying to figure out what to do next. I was thinking about going back into the military and I was like, oh, maybe I'll get back in and I'll go back out to North Carolina and finish up what I'd started there. And, but also like the war was sort of winding down and it was just kind of different time. And, you know, Jay said, hey, I've been wanting to do something for a long time that brings together vets and athletes. And I've actually got a name for it already. You know, it's called MVP, Merging Vets and Players. And I was like, oh, it sounds pretty cool. And then I started thinking, like, you know what, though? There's going to be a lot of people there's already people in the military that kind of roll their eyes at the whole, when the coaches are like, we're going to battle, you know, and it's like the whole football military comparison. Well, I should say football war comparison, which I doesn't bother me. I understand why that stuff's used, and you know, it's funny to me. But so I kind of asked, I was like, well, what about that? Like, he's like, well, no, it's not. I'm talking about the locker room. I'm not talking about what we're doing on the field of play or the field of battle. And I was like, yeah, I mean, that is very similar, you know, and I was like, the identity with the uniform and all that stuff is also very similar, and kind of losing that at a young age is also very similar. And so we ended up starting this thing, and initially it was just, I had met some vets who were living in this homeless shelter in East Hollywood on Sunset Boulevard in this old building. And I went down there, told them about what Jay had sort of brought up to me, and said, hey, you guys want to come up to his gym? You know, he's got this real nice gym called Unbreakable Performance Center in West Hollywood, right behind Pink Taco there. I'm like, if you guys want to come up there, we'll get a workout in, we'll go grab some tacos afterwards. You know, how's that sound? And they were like, yeah, that'd be great. So they like took like the van, piled in there. They came up, worked out at the gym like on a Sunday. And I went back and told Jay about it. I was like, dude, it was really cool. Like, we just worked out. And, you know, went and got a bite afterwards. And these guys kind of opened up a little bit to me. And I could tell some of them are pretty closed off people, but they just felt appreciated that, you know, that you cared enough to open the doors to your gym to them, and that they're not seen as just these homeless vets or whatever, you know? So, anyway, he was like, well, that's pretty awesome. And I was like, yeah, it'd be really cool if you next time you could come and you could maybe bring some athletes. And so Jay brings, you know, in Jay Glazer fashion, he brings like Tony Gonzalez and Randy Couture to like the next workout, you know? So then we've got these vets in there. After we get a workout in, they're huddling up, kind of we're talking about stuff. And Tony and Randy kind of open up about how they feel like they, in some ways, left some of it out on the field. Like they're a bit of a failure. Like Randy's dream was to be an Olympic wrestler, you know, and it didn't happen. And it bothers him. And it's just like, this guy's the 6-time heavyweight, you know, champion of the world in the UFC. Tony Gonzalez, first ballot Hall of Famer, 17 years in the league, like one of the greatest tight ends ever. Same thing. Like, he's like, when I felt like when I lost the game, I just felt like I didn't have a home anymore, you know? And it's just, it was so interesting to hear. And the vets were like relating to this. They're like, damn, I'm living in a shelter right now. I got no money. I don't know what the heck I'm going to do. But I feel the same way that Tony Gonzalez and Randy Couture does. Like, that's comforting in a sense.
Right. You don't
that
feel
they're
like
being
you're
vulnerable
alone.
in that way. Yeah, you don't feel like you're alone. Not that we want people to feel bad about themselves, but it's like we all do at some level. We all
Right.
feel insignificant at times, and we all feel small and like we're not of value. And you know, it's a common thing. So it was just cool to see those connections right off the bat, and we just kind of grew it from there.
And is that kind of what started the pipeline for the movie then? Because the movie's tied closely to that exact same concept. So are
Right.
they intertwined, or did you just do the movie outside that?
Yeah, I mean, they're intertwined in the sense of like that story in the film is that, I mean, the story that I just kind of told, we sort of recreated in the movie. The movie's about the genesis of how MVP started. You know, it's a
Right.
scripted film. It's not a documentary. And we shot it in the middle of COVID. I mean, when COVID kind of shut everything down, it was tough because we have 8 chapters around the country now. And I think at the time we had 5. At the time we were in LA, Vegas, Chicago, Atlanta, and New York. And we had just opened New York a couple weeks before lockdown. So we were down there in one of the Gracie's gyms in Midtown, and it's awesome. Like, man, we're going to be in New York City now. And then it just, the apocalypse. And it sucked because there was a lot of people that needed that, and not just vets and athletes. You know how our whole country kind of went through this weird isolation.
Right.
It just like it was really difficult. So the fall rolls around. We're now in like the second wave of COVID, locking it down again. I was frustrated. We were all frustrated. And we were doing Zoom. We were doing our sessions on Zoom, which was awesome. It was cool that we'd have 100 people on these Zoom sessions doing workouts together and chatting afterwards, which was awesome. But at the same time, it was like, what else can we do right now? And the Screen Actors Guild had just like passed sort of their guidelines for the COVID protocols. And I did some research and found out there was a bunch of free testing all over LA. I found out that the free testing would actually qualify for the SAG testing, like it counted, So I was like, all right, well, we don't have much money to make this movie, but if all these people are willing to go to the free drive-in testing, that'll save us a ton. I bet a lot of movies and productions aren't going to be running right now because the COVID costs are too much.
Right.
We might be one of the only things going in town. Turns out we kind of were. We were one of the first projects back up and running, and we ended up getting a lot of these athletes to play cameos in the movie. All the veterans portrayed on screen are played by actual vets, and then you got like Tom Arnold and Mo McRae, Christina Ochoa, Dina Shihabi, some really good actors that on the budget we were on normally we could not afford, and they just like pretty much gave their time for the most part. I mean, we paid them the SAG scale for our ultra low budget movie. And they were just all in. And then like most of the crew were veterans. A lot of them were MVP members. And so it was cool that like we were telling our own story, because a lot of those people had kind of been there from the beginning. And of course, it's an hour and 50-minute long movie. So liberties are taken. We have to change some things. There's composite characters, but essentially everything you hear and see in that film, they were all filmed on location at that actual shelter in Jay's gym, in all these real places. And all the dialogue that was written, that's stuff that people had shared on the mat, or that you'd met a veteran somewhere and they told you a story, and it was just like that line resonated with you, or that feeling, or that situation. And so it's all this collection of stories that we just kind of put into a screenplay that kind of tells the story of MVP. And then we shot it, and it ended up being pretty good. And started out, we had a little theatrical release through Film Rises, the distributor that picked it up. So it had a bit of a theatrical release, and then it was on Amazon. Well, it's still on Amazon Prime and Apple TV if people want to rent, but Showtime licensed it February 1st. And so it's really like getting out there, which is great. And we want to keep pushing it. I mean, we still, it's playing in Canada now as well, but we're yet to cross the pond with this. We're trying to figure out how to make that happen. But I mean, the main thing is it's for the people that are not just part of this program, but will resonate with this program. So, I mean, I always encourage every veteran and athlete to check out MVP, check out the movie, and then check us out at vetsandplayers.org and learn more about how you can, be a part of our mission.
Well, it all sounds, number one, really important. Like you said, you don't want people to feel like they're alone or that their feelings aren't felt by other people. There's strength in numbers. That's, I think,
Right.
something everyone knows. Would you be open to doing another movie, or was this kind of a
Yeah.
one-off? Oh, so you would. So you got a taste.
No,
You
I
really
want to
like
do
it.
more. Yeah, I mean,
You were in Terminal List too, right? You made a brief appearance.
I did. That's how I met Jack.
Yeah.
Actually, that's not true. Jack and I met like 5 years ago. We both were at this event. We both spoke at this event. That was for the Special Forces Association out in. The event was out in Newhall, California, sort of north of the city and everything. And we went to like Oak Tree Gun Club, I believe, and it was like a big 3-gun tournament. And it was fun. So I met Jack there. But yeah, got to see him again out there with the show. But no, it was an awesome experience. I loved I love being a part of that. It's a really cool project. I mean, the fact that that story was developed by a guy that lived it, and obviously it's a work of fiction.
Right.
But Jack's a brilliant writer, but also he knows that world. He's actually been a part of that world. So there's so much authenticity to that. Um, and then, people like Jared Shaw, who's good friends with Jack, and also Chris Pratt, sort of was that connecting piece to bring the book to Chris. And then Chris championed from the beginning, like making sure there's a lot of vets involved
Right.
with that show, and Jack as well, in front of and behind the camera, not just, oh, you guys are the tech advisors and that's it, and maybe we'll put one of you in the show. It's like that squad that I'm in. I'm like on the hostage rescue team. It's all vets. It's like 5 or 6 of us, and we're all vets. And that was just so cool that they did that. They said they were going to do that, and then they went through the casting process and made it happen. And I think we were great.
Oh, it's a
I'm
great
biased,
series. It's a great
but
series.
yeah,
All right, I got one last question for you. It is kind of a serious one. I'm fascinated to get your opinion on it. So, for
yeah,
the viewers who don't know, you were very pivotal, for lack of a better term, of being a peacemaker during the Kaepernick um, kneeling, whether you want to call it, people were very upset, people supported it. You kind of came in, tried to play a peacemaker role with the kneeling. My question for you is that's already 7 or 8 years ago at this point. I think that was 2016, so 7 years ago.
yeah.
A
It'll be
lot
7 years
is
in September.
a lot has happened since you came in, and I think what you did was good. You tried to bring people together. He has said and done a lot of things since then about cops, the military, communism. When you look back, knowing what you know now and the things that were said in the years that followed, do you regret getting involved, or are you still okay with getting involved and maybe just wish some of those things about murders and had not been said?
Yeah, no, I mean, I don't regret getting. I would do it again, and I would probably say the same things. I mean, for a little more context for those that don't know, I met him right at the beginning of when he was sitting on the bench
Right.
protesting. So he was sitting on the bench, sort of away from the team, and um, you know, when I first heard about it, it was like people blowing up my inbox saying, "You need to say something." I'm like, "What? What happened?" Like I didn't even know what happened. And like I said earlier, I'm a huge 49ers fan. I was a big Kaepernick fan too, because we were the Niners since Steve Young left. We didn't have a quarterback that brought us to the promised land in a long time. And he comes in, we go to the Super Bowl and then back to the NFC Championship. And then, the year after that, he got banged up, started to, struggle a bit. And anyway, it was tough, but I was like always pulling for him. I wanted him back to where he was. And I think that was the 2012, 13 season or something like that, 2011, 12 maybe. Um, and so I see this, and then I'm like, at first I'm like kind of hurt by it. I'm like, man, this guy, like, that's disappointing. This is the dude I supported. And then I like went and watched his interview in the locker room, the first one he did. It's like 18 minutes long. And I listened to a lot of the things he said. And he was saying things, first of all, why he was doing it. Um, I didn't have a problem with, and I still don't. I think I want to see law enforcement be the best they can be, and if people in the military, same thing. If we're doing something that not kosher and we're not being held accountable, that's not okay. I wouldn't be all right with that. But I also understand there's so much nuance to it. I mean, being a cop's a really hard job. It doesn't pay great. Nobody likes you. Even before all this, like, you're driving down the street, you see a cop, you tense up, in your car,
Right.
and whether you did something wrong or not, you're just like, oh God, get away from me. Like, I don't want to, it's just how it is, because that means tickets. That means, who knows what. Where it's like in the military is a little different. People see someone in, camouflage at a restaurant, they buy them lunch. And so we're luckier in that regard. So like that, it's a tough job. There's a lot of really good cops of all races that, do their best and hate seeing this stuff too. Like, they don't want to see that, tarnishing the badge. And so there was that side of things, which I resonated with. And then the whole anthem piece of it, where it's like, people like me, we have a different relationship to the flag, the anthem, because of our experience. And so I think I understood that too. I was like, hey, I don't like that he's protesting, and saying he's not going to stand for the anthem. But he feels differently about those things than I do because of what I experienced. And, protests are meant to be uncomfortable. I get why he's doing it at that time. It's obviously it's working. People are talking about it. That's the intent. And so I got reached out actually by Fox News, CNN, MSNBC, like all of them reached out. And I was worried about going on one of those shows because I was like, well, they're going to want me. I think they're going to want me to take a side or have a strong opinion about it, bring somebody else in with the opposite opinion, and we're going to argue about it. And nothing's going to really get fixed, but it is good TV. Like I get it. And I was like, I just don't want to be a part of that because I kind of feel like I'm in the middle on this thing. Like I've got, I spent a lot of time in those football locker rooms more than the military side of things. Being at Texas where, there was a guy on my team that was wrongfully arrested and accused of something he didn't do, and it may very well have had to do with the color of his skin. Like, I don't know, I don't know the details of all that. And it kind of ruined his career. It sucks. And it's like, those kind of things are something to consider. So what I ended up doing is writing an open letter through the Army Times, which is it's a smaller publication. Not a lot of people read it that I know of. But some people do. I always trash the Army Times. It's so messed up. I don't mean that. I appreciate it, you guys giving me the platform. But they had reached out a couple times about me writing an open letter, regarding this situation. This was like, the week this was going on, they pinged me twice, and I was like, all right, fine, I'll just write an open letter. And at least I did something, so people can, if people that keep hitting me up saying, you got to do something, you got to say something, I'm like, well, here, I said my piece. So I just kind of, in the letter, I laid out, it was, open letter to Cap that just said, hey, this is why I feel the way that I do around those symbols because of my experience, but I understand you probably feel different. And, I spent time in the Darfur, and that's why I joined the military. That's why I wanted to be a Green Beret. Seeing that level of oppression and a genocide, and wanted to do something about it. Like, I'm all about taking action. I'm with it. So like, I support the reasons you're doing what you're doing. I look forward to the day that you're inspired to stand for the anthem. Once again, I'll stand right next to you. And then I just signed it, De Oppressor Libere, which means to free the oppressed, Nate Boyer. And his publicist called me like the next day. So it went out, it went like crazy viral. Honestly, like places like Outkick, that type of, a lot of sports related media entities just blasted this thing because I think a lot of people, it kind of resonated with them. So they're like, that's kind of how I feel. Like I see your point here, but also what about this, And the publicist reached out and was like, hey, they have the final preseason game is tomorrow night in San Diego. Colin wants to meet with you before the game if you're able to do it. And I was like, all right. I mean, it was to me, it was odd that a publicist was reaching out. So I was like, I was worried it was like a media stunt or something.
Right,
so I was like,
right.
is there cameras around? And she's like, no. She doesn't, no cameras, nothing like that. He literally just wants to talk to you. Like, this isn't what that is. And I was like, all right, sounds good to me. So I go down to San Diego from LA. I meet him in the lobby of the hotel. It was him and Eric Reed, actually. And they honestly couldn't be nicer, man. They were very appreciative. I mean, Colin made it a point to say he was, he was grateful for, what I'd done in the military. He said some of his close friends were in the military, and he wanted to make sure, above all else, that this didn't come off as anti-military to anybody. And I said, well, the reality there is you don't really get to choose how people perceive things. That's the tough part. You know what I mean? So I understand that, but other people, don't feel that way. And you don't have to respect it, but maybe you should consider that. And he did respect it. And he actually asked me after we talked about the situation at length, he said, well, do you think there's a different way I can protest that's not going to offend people in the military? Because I've committed to not standing until things start to change. But you think there's something else I could do? And I was like, I mean, I think being alongside your teammates is the most important thing, no matter what you do. Those people are, you got to go out there and do a job with them. I think it's a good message for the country and the world that we may not all agree on everything and, see eye to eye and kind of have different opinions about stuff. But when it's time to go do a job, like when I'm in the military, time to go on mission, I don't even like half the people I'm, willing to die for, and vice versa. But they'd still take a bullet for me. You know what I mean? And that's pretty cool.
Right.
That's pretty unique and special. And he agreed that was important. And he was like, well, I'm not going to stand. So I said, I mean, I guess the only other option then is to take a knee. I said, I think kneeling I think it's a better look than sitting back on the bench like you don't care. That's what some people may perceive. I said, I think kneeling's respectful. People take a knee to pray and propose to their future spouse. When a player on the field is hurt, the other players often take a knee out of respect. And when I go visit my best friend's grave at Arlington, I take a knee, in front of the headstone. And so in my opinion, like, I think that's an upgrade, or at least an adjustment that I think a lot of people will welcome. And they didn't. And part of that was the way it, was sort of portrayed in the media. Once again, like, all of a sudden I became the guy that told Kaepernick to protest. And I was like, I never told him to
yeah,
protest,
no, and that's unfair. Anyone who says that is just not looking at the facts. I know we're running close on time here, so I just want to, if you could talk to him today, and maybe you still do
Yeah,
talk to him, I don't know.
right.
It's 2023. I think the thing that it wasn't so much the protest, it was a lot of the stuff that came after. The pig socks, they're slave catchers, they murder with impunity and get paid vacation. All that came after, way after you got involved. If you could talk to him today, would you say, hey, people are with you, or some variation? People are with you, but you got to be less explosive and incendiary with claims of that nature.
Yeah, no, I mean, I to be fair, I haven't talked to him, and it's probably been 5 years. But yeah, I mean, that was a tough part. Look, I remember, like, so he agrees to kneel. I stand next to him on the sideline when that happened that night. I told him I'd be there with him. I stood next to him, and I hear the most prominent sound I heard was the booing. And I was like, to me, that was way more disrespectful than anybody taking a knee, right? People booing during the anthem. And it's like, all right, if you really care that much, what do you're not even standing there with your hand on your heart singing the thing, you're booing somebody else.
Right.
So when I think of that and all the other incendiary remarks that he heard from people and racist things that he heard from people and all this stuff, like, I understand why it's tough to want to continue to find middle ground like he did with me, right? Because it's
Right.
like, well, this isn't working because people still are just angry about it. So I think that sort of pushed him further to the side, right, or to one side. But I would say, as much as that sucks and it's really tough, I still believe this to this day. He also has an opportunity to bring people together, like everybody together.
Right.
You know what I mean? And it takes kind of what you're speaking to. It takes. It's hard. I got a lot of backlash from the veteran community, and guys I served with called me a disgrace to the Green Beret. Like, these things happen, so I know that sucks. I hate hearing that. It did not feel good. But I also, sort of at least try to pride myself on hearing every opinion, every side, respecting them, and not lashing back, and it's tough. It's not fun. You know what I mean? It's tough. And it would be a hell of a lot easier for me to just gravitate towards the side of this thing that sort of embraces me, and says, well, you're a war hero or whatever, which isn't, I'm not a war hero, but, like, you know what I mean? Like, that I could go that way and kind of play that card. But I just, I don't want to, because I want to focus on more people on, being understanding and coming together and, like, figuring this thing out. So yeah, that's a tough one. I mean, like that's, when I heard about it, I didn't see it, but when I heard about, um, some of the stuff that, uh, well, I did see some, stuff that had been tweeted, and, when you heard about stuff with the show that he had done for Netflix as well, and kind of the comparisons to slavery and playing in the NFL, stuff
Oh
like
yeah,
that. Like,
I forgot that one,
you
but
know,
yes.
yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, that was tough because I was like, and I wasn't in contact with him at the time, and I wish I still was in contact with him because I respect him, and I think I know he is a good man. You know what I mean? And he has a big heart. Um, but these are decisions people make on their own, and he certainly has his reasons as to why he feels the way he does, and you know he's every right to feel that way. I mean, we all do. That's the great thing about this country is we do have the freedom to believe and express ourselves.
Absolutely,
Um,
absolutely. It's part of being
I
an
mean that's
American.
that's what I fought for.
Right.
Yeah, I mean I took the oath to defend the Constitution, and the First Amendment is exactly that. So at the same time, um, understanding that the things that you say and you do uh, also affect people as well. You know what I mean? And can hurt people, and just it's hard. I don't know. I'm not. Never been a person of color in this country, so I don't want to pretend with that experience to know anything about what that experience is like. Um, but I still think he has that opportunity to be a part of bringing this country back together.
Well, Nate, that was a really, I like that you brought up a lot of good points there. I think people will agree with a lot of it. Some of them might not agree with it, but it's your opinion. And I,
And
like we
that's
just
okay.
said, and that's okay. This is the United States of America. We have a right to
That's
express
right.
ourselves. Nate, I want to say thank you. This was pretty neat. This was awesome. It is, check out Merging Vets with Players. Check out the movie MVP. If you're watching this, you can find Nate on Instagram and social media as well. So, Nate, on behalf of the Outkick audience, I want to give you a big thanks, not only for joining us today, but also your experience on the armed forces.
Thanks, David. I appreciate it, brother. I thank you for having me, and having an open conversation, brother. That's what it's all about.